I'm Rosie Hardy. This is Rosie Hardy Gardening, and we're on end of April Q&A. Thank you very much for everybody who has submitted questions. Let's get going. Somebody has asked, they're based in Farnborough, Hampshire, so they're not far away from us here, and they're wanting to grow some chrysanthemums from rooted cuttings, and notice that they get actually very, very tall. Wants to know if they can do the Chelsea chop on them. Will that keep them down? And then has also found that they don't seem to be frost hardy, and he doesn't have a greenhouse, or she doesn't have a greenhouse. Can you store them in a garage over the winter? Now, I'm looking at this and thinking that you are actually trying to get a hold of what are known as show chrysanthemums, and which are the ones which are used for cut flower, and those are not hardy. Cutting them down and doing Chelsea chop on them is just going to make them more of a spray. You won't get as many big flowers on them as you would do if you allow them to go up as a single stem. Have you thought about hardy chrysanthemums, which are ones which can go out into the garden, stay out there, and will come back perennially each year? I've got someone else here who has hellebores in a shady area and is wanting another plant variety to go in the same area to give some summer interest and that won't crowd out the actual hellebores. There are quite a lot of shady plants that you could try. There are disporums, amsonias, and you could try even martagon lilies, which look really, really good. So those are a few suggestions for you. This one is which flowers would complement Hardy Geranium, something like Brookside, for example, in a hanging basket. This is unusual because normally you wouldn't put something like a Hardy Geranium in a hanging basket. There's absolutely no reason why you can't. And I'm sort of thinking that if you've got something like Brookside, which is going to go up a little bit taller and is blue, then why not use something which is herbaceous, which would be slightly trailing, so things like lamium or a juga. They come with very pretty foliage as well as good contrast flowers. What do you recommend to eliminate climbing plants forever? In my garden, they grow every year inside the flowers and other plants. I don't know what to do except tear them off, but they always come back. Now, I'm not quite sure what this person has got. I am thinking perhaps that they've got convolvulus, which is bindweed, which does go and wind itself around the plant material. It is a perennial weed, and there's very little that you can do other than keep on cutting it down. I'm not an advocate for using herbicides. You can if you want to, but you've got to then be very, very careful that you don't kill off your garden plants as well. So when you are digging up and you see long threads of white shoots and root, that is your bindweed root, and it'll be growing through the soil, and you've just got to eradicate bit by bit by bit, I'm afraid. Do you have any recommendations for taller perennial or shrub screening that can handle harsh wind and cut back in the winter? This person lives in a coastal area of East Hokkaido in Japan, which is zone 6A. Gets very cold, heavy snow, etc. Tried Eranthus and has, even bamboos don't work. The only thing that I can think of for you would be Hippophae rhamnoides. That is a very, very tough coastal shrub, and it is native to your area of the world. So try that. This one is someone has planted a few bulbs of oriental lily in small pots, can now see that the tips are starting to appear. Wants to know if they should transplant them into a bigger pot or straight into the ground, and whether or not they can go in a shady area or not. Right, so the main thing here when you see the bulbs coming at the top is not actually the top that you're worried about, it's the roots. So if you can just turn the pot over, just holding the surface, turn the pot over, have a look and see if the roots are coming out of the bottom of the pot, or even if you can gently tap the pot off and it's got a good root ball there, then absolutely it is ready to either transplant into a larger pot, or if the frost has disappeared in your area, you can put it out in the garden. And oriental lilies should be fine in a shady spot. any tips for success with lavender? I can't seem to keep mine. Zone 6B in the US. Planted 4 last year and only 1 has come back. Lavender can be quite fickle, I'm afraid. They are definitely awkward if you've got heavier soils. If you have heavier soils, then I'm afraid the best thing that you can do is put them into containers and then make sure that the containers, when it is really bad weather, are moved somewhere where it's slightly sheltered. That's the best I can suggest with that. Otherwise, I would suggest you choose an alternative, something like a Nepeta or another shrub, which will work better. I know none of them have the perfume that lavender does, but if you have heavy soils, they really don't like it. Someone here asking how I protect plants from the ground from slugs and snails. They're feasting on their hostas. Tried wool pellets, they aren't working. Looking for a more environmentally friendly solution. Fully understand this. And the thing to do with slugs and snails is basically make sure that you perhaps have a sacrificial plant. So something that they'll go and eat first so that your hosta gets a chance to grow up, and then when the leaf is slightly stronger, they're not so bad. Go out in the evenings and pick up, collect, put into a bin, bucket, sorry, and go and, you will have to kill them, I'm afraid, or feed them to birds. Encourage in anything like birds, wildlife, frogs, toads, all those, they will all benefit and you'll find your slug population goes down. When you're repotting your hosta, make sure there are no slug and snail eggs actually in the compost that they are in at the time. If they're in the ground, just check around. Copper strips help, so you can get these wide, probably inch, 5 centimeter deep copper strips that you just put around like a collar around the plant. That works quite well. Anything that is sharp, and the other thing that works incredibly well is bran. So you can get, it just happens to be one of the driest ones is Tesco's bran. The sort that you would mix in and help your digestion yourself. But basically what it does is you put that around and it's so dry, it dries up all the mucus from the foot of the snails and the slugs, and therefore they don't go towards your plant. Works really, really well. You do have to reapply it if it rains, because once it's got wet, they can go across it. But when it's dry, they won't go anywhere near the plants. Then there is a last one. Long blooming perennials that do not need to be staked. What you need to be looking for in perennials that don't need staking is either square stems or stems that have got ribs on them, because those plants have got natural engineering and they will hold themselves up. Things that are good for the back of the border are Helianthus, Silphium and Leucanthemella. Thank you very much for watching, and please do subscribe to the channel.